Hello, my name is John Whiteman, and welcome to my CS6460 Educational Technology Milestone 1 presentation. Today I'm going to be talking about the contextually correct scattered substitution framework, or COCOSCATS. So what is COCOSCATS? It's a development project to help people to learn new foreign vocabulary. It uses a grammar-free yet contextually correct reading methodology, and I'll show you an example of that soon. It complements existing teaching aids such as flashcards and textbooks. More importantly, and probably where most of the work is taking place, is the back-end framework. And this framework is what creates the content, and it uses natural language libraries, translators, and human brain power. So here's an example. The first sentence, we'll call that L1, L1 being in English, a sentence about going to the library. The second sentence is a combination of L1 and L2, in this case Indonesian. And Indonesian, you see some scattered about translations, not a lot of them, just enough for, say, a new learner of the language to understand what's being said. You can tell by the context of what is being said by the L1 language. And that's what's very powerful about this. Now, the grammar itself in some places is not correct, but that's not the point here. This is really a reinforcement of vocabulary, and the crutch, if you will, is the L1 language that enables them to understand the actual context. And by the way, the context translations are correct. That's the whole point of the back-end framework. Some challenges with this, though, if we were to do this on the fly without thinking about it and just hook it up to a regular dictionary, we would not be sure if the actual translations are contextually correct. Some words are spelled the same but have multiple meanings. Also, we're not sure what actually gets translated, and some words it might be just a waste of time. And of course, if you asked a teacher to do this manually, they would just laugh because it's a lot of time. It could be kind of wasteful too. So we came up with a solution. It's an automated solution, or semi-automated, if you will. We take L1 as source, and again, it can be any format at all. It could be any type of source, JSON, XML, or a wiki, API, or whatever. We analyze that source, and we're going to use natural language libraries. We can use some machine learning technologies. In this case, we're going to be using the natural language toolkit from Python. We're going to select words from there and phrases, and it's going to be based upon some sort of natural language algorithms, maybe just simple frequency count or whatever, and possibly parts of speech. And then we're going to take a real translator or a contextual translator. In our case, we're going to be using Microsoft Azure in the cloud API, and we're going to translate those words. And then we're going to take that output, and it can be any format. Ideally, it's probably back to the same format that it came from, but it can be any format. And along the way of this whole work process, we're going to be checking to make sure that the words are indeed the correct translations. Here's the framework. I'm not going to go into great detail on this, but I just kind of went over before. There's a workflow where you have an input, and a plugin is assigned to handle that input. There's an analyzer, there's a translator, and there's an output bucket. And it's very, very flexible to add these plugins as you go along. So I built the framework. This is the source code. It's up in GitHub, so I highly encourage people to take a look at it and participate if you want to. If you are considering building a plugin, all you have to do is register it, and it's very, very flexible. Basically, whatever parameters you want to give it, it understands it, and that's it. That's the whole point. And once you build it and register it, you can then add it to the workflow. And here again, we see the workflow in the same JSON file from the input, analyzer, translator, and output. But we just ask for the plugin name, the class name, and the method to use, and you're ready to go. So I'm going to run a demo, and the demo is going to contain some input text. This is the L1 text, which is in English. It's a story I wrote about houses or things that you would normally associate with a home. Below that, you'll see the L1, L2 text. That's the actual final product where we're taking the Indonesian, the L2 language, and making some scatter translations about it. On the right-hand side, this is the output. Again, I told you I was going to use the natural language toolkit, and we're doing some naive checking where we're taking the top 30% in terms of frequency count of those words in those sentences, and then also we are looking at specific parts of speech like a noun or adjective. We can filter on them. But that tool is quite powerful to do other things. So let me run it from the command line. I have a front-end script that says run.py, and this is in Python. Here's the input. This is just the text input. Nothing has changed, nothing. I'm going to add just maybe a word here to show that I'm doing stuff. I'm going to save it and exit, and it's going to go to the next phase. As I mentioned, the next phase is the analyzer, and again, this is what it picks out. And we could go in here, we could delete things, we can even add our own if we want, but normally this is the place where you would want to check to see if there's anything that doesn't look quite right. You would just get rid of it. I'm not going to change anything. We're going to move to the next one. This one takes a little bit longer, but not a lot. This is actually the translations, and it went out to my, I have a Microsoft Azure account, and it went out and did the translations live, and it does two sets of translations. The first one, it will take the entire L1 string and it will translate the entire string. But of course, that's not our goal here, to translate everything. And then it will translate each of these words one by one. And what we end up doing is we get a very simplistic probabilistic model that says if this word is not found, the translated word, not found in both translation scenarios, then it's probably, well, questionable at least. We're not 100% sure. And then these words that it came out with, it actually is true. There are multiple meanings. It might not be the right case for them. So I was very, very happy to see the output of that. And it was a very simple model to do. So again, we can make changes here, and then once we're done, this is the final product. Here are the insertions that we said. There's a food that we added here. Here's a regular text and everything else that we had talked about. Now, all of these pop-ups that we just saw here, we can configure it in the file not to even do this. This could have been completely fully automated. It's not always going to be the case. You're always going to want to probably check them as you go along, but I believe over time, as more stuff is added to the database and we start applying things like AI and machine learning technologies, we would have much more certainty as to whether or not these words are contextually correct. I want to thank you very much for spending the time and watching my video. Thank you.